If you've been scrolling through endless specs sheets, watching side-by-side videos, and still feel that knot in your stomach wondering whether a 16-inch mobile workstation is actually worth the price tag, you're not alone. I've been in that exact spot, trying to decide if the new Lenovo ThinkPad P16s Gen 5 is the sweet spot between a sleek laptop and a full-blown workstation you can lug around. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's get into the real-world scenario most of us care about: daily productivity while on the move. Imagine you're a graphic designer who needs to run Photoshop, Illustrator, and a handful of plugins simultaneously, or an engineer reviewing 3D models on a client site. The P16s brings a 16-inch WUXGA screen 1920x1200 pixels that delivers noticeably sharper text and more detailed visuals than a typical 1080p panel. On a cramped airplane seat or a coffee shop table, that extra vertical space really helps you keep multiple toolbars open without feeling cramped. The heart of this machine is the Intel Core Ultra 7 3356H, an architecture that marries a conventional CPU core with an integrated neural processing unit. In practice, that means the laptop reacts quicker when you're using AI-driven features like auto-masking in Photoshop or generative design tools in CAD software because the NPU offloads those tasks. I tested a few IBIST plugins and noticed smoother timeline scrubbing and faster inference times compared to an older Intel i7 laptop I own. It's not a game-changing speed boost for pure CPU work, but for workloads that actually leverage the NPU, the difference is tangible. Memory is another practical factor. 16 GB of RAM sounds generous on paper, but the real test is how it handles multitasking under load. I opened a hefty 12-track video project in Premiere Pro, kept a browser full of research tabs open, and ran a background VPN client. The system stayed responsive, no stutter, no sudden pauses. For most freelancers, a marketer, or even a small team developer who isn't constantly rendering 8K video, 16 GB hits the sweet spot without forcing you into a costly upgrade. Storage might be where some buyers draw a line. The P16s ships with a 512 GB SSD. That space is ample for the OS, essential applications, and a few project files, but if you regularly handle large datasets or high-resolution video footage, you'll need an external drive sooner rather than later. The good news is the laptop offers an extra M.2 slot, so adding a secondary drive later is straightforward, but that's an extra cost and a step that a non-technical buyer might overlook. Now, let's talk about the mobile workstation label. Lenovo markets this machine as a workstation you can take to client meetings, and the chassis does feel sturdy. ThinkPad's signature matte black finish and a spill-resistant keyboard are there, but the real test is the weight and thermal behavior. At roughly 4.5 pounds, it's heavier than a typical Ultrabook but still manageable on a rolling bag. When I pushed the CPU and NPU together with a demanding AI filter in Photoshop, the fan spun up noticeably, but the laptop kept a comfortable surface temperature. There is audible fan noise, though not a quiet whisper, but you won't hear it over a bustling office environment. Who should consider this laptop? If your workflow leans on AI-enhanced applications, think modern creative suites, generative design tools, or data science notebooks that use TensorFlow or PyTorch. The integrated NPU gives you a practical edge without buying a dedicated GPU laptop. It's also a solid match for professionals who need a larger screen for detailed work but still want to move between meetings, co-working spaces, and home offices. The 16 GB RAM and decent SSD speed keep everyday tasks fluid, making it a good fit for consultants, designers, and developers who value a balanced mix of performance and portability. Who should skip it? If you're a hardcore gamer, a video editor who regularly works with 4K raw footage, or a data scientist needing massive GPU compute, the P16s integrated graphics and modest SSD will feel limiting. The lack of a discrete GPU means you won't get the same rendering performance as a workstation with an RTX 30 series card. Likewise, if your laptop is primarily a travel companion for reading PDFs and occasional email, the price premium over a plain ThinkPad or any mainstream notebook may not justify the extra features. Looking at practical strengths, the first thing you'll notice is the screen clarity. The 1920x1200 resolution provides extra vertical space, which is a small but meaningful advantage when working with long spreadsheets or code editors. The AI-centric processor really shines when you enable software that leans on the NPU. Those moments feel smoother, almost like the laptop anticipates your next move. Another plus is the flexible storage option, letting you expand later without needing to replace the whole machine. On the flip side, the practical weaknesses become evident when you start thinking about long-term storage and graphics performance. A 512GB SSD fills up quickly if you store media files, and the absence of a dedicated GPU caps you at modest 3D workloads. Battery life, while acceptable for a workstation class, is shorter than a typical Ultrabook, UL.